Hi there, friends. I'm meteorologist Robert Spetta, and today we got a few things to talk about out here across, well, the global tropics. This is our Thursday edition of Talkin Tropics, and let's give a review of what we got coming up in the next half hour. One, what's happening out in the Atlantic? It is still November, and it's still hurricane season, but the seasons are definitely changing, and I'm going to emphasize that and discuss why I'm kind of leaning towards no more tropical systems out here for the rest of the season. But we're also going to take a look around the globe because there are other places that very much are seeing some major Cat 4 to Cat 5 type equivalent storms in the tropics. And we got to talk with Josh Morgerman. He's one of the world's most famous and just experienced storm chasers, I should say. He's been in 83 eye walls globally in cyclones, typhoons, and hurricanes alike, and he just went through the Cat 5 inner eye wall of Melissa. So I got to sit down and talk with him about just that experience, and it is an absolutely just incredible conversation the way he describes it. So if anything, just stick around for that talk here. But first, let's talk about what is happening out there now after Melissa. So this is what's happening in your Atlantic today. And of course, not much. Melissa, or what's left of it, is out there in the North Atlantic. That's kind of Iceland's problem at this point, and there's no tropical cyclone formation anticipated over the next 7 days, according to the National Hurricane Center. But we can even take that a step forward. Let's take a look at the Climate Prediction Center and what their 2-week tropical outlook is showing. Now, out ahead of Melissa, about 2.5 weeks, this actually had a big red area in the Caribbean. This specific graphic was very good at telling that long-range outlook and kind of showing something could form. It shows nothing at this time. Really just kind of calm. Now, to kind of put that aside, we still have very warm sea surface temperatures in the Caribbean. Temperatures out there, mid to low 80s. You need about 81 to 82 degrees to have good tropical cyclone formation. It can happen below that, but that's what you need. So there is still plenty of energy in this area of the tropics across the Caribbean. For that matter, though, you really don't have any convection to speak of, at least at this time, outside of the Central America gyre. But outside of that, there's not really much to talk about here with it. In fact, we can take a look at the ECMWF guidance here, and I'm just showing this. I could show the multiple models, but really this gives you an idea. So you can actually see that Central America gyre I'm talking about. It's right in here. You see that, my circles on the screen in the bottom left there? That's that convection that often does flare up this time of year. It's a little bit further towards the south in those very warm sea surface temperatures. But the problem that is combating is this cool, dry, high pressure towards the north that also provides a lot of shear. So yeah, there might be some tropical waves out in the Caribbean. There's just too much shear working against it just towards the north. And if anything did develop here in mid-November, it absolutely, based on everything I see right now, would stay further towards the south. And I would dare say that the Atlantic hurricane season, or I shouldn't say that, I would dare say the United States hurricane season outside of Puerto Rico, it's shut off. And the reason is we've had this really strong cold front that came through last week. We have more cold fronts coming through this coming week. In fact, some of the coldest air of the season is going to be blasting down by Monday into Tuesday across the southeast, where we could even see snow in parts of northern Georgia and freezing temperatures in northern areas of Florida. That combined with this dip in the jet stream, and actually let's rewind this to about Sunday and the Monday. You can see that big shift in the jet. Look at that. The 540 line, what we use to measure where kind of snow is, so this is a general thumb rule, is going to be down to North Florida. This just simply indicates that, yeah, I think our tropical season in the Atlantic is coming nearly to an end, or at least in the United States, I should emphasize. Hurricane season doesn't end until November, and it's probably, if we see anything, it would be more of these sharp recurvature lows that would kick off towards north or deep tropics, but they would basically be stopped by this dip in the jet stream across the Gulf and over towards northern areas of Florida. So for the states, it's safe to say it's mostly over. I wouldn't rule it out completely, as Lloyd from Dumb and Dumber says. So you're telling me there's a chance? Yeah, maybe like 1 to 5% chance, but yeah, I think it's safe to say the Atlantic tropical season is winding down. And that's my kind of key takeaway from that. I mean, you actually see here, by mid-November, you see how the numbers really drop off. Actually, I need to fix the "we are here." That still shows September. But you see here by November 10th, it just almost drops off. And by mid-November, it's like out of 100 storms, so let's just based on percentages, like 5 to 10% take place after mid-November. So we're pretty much there. Now, it's not to say that's impossible, and people are going to cite these. Hurricane Iota, just 5 years ago, was November 13th to the 18th in 2020. 84 deaths in Nicaragua, $1.4 billion in damages. That was a serious November storm. Hurricane Kate from the 15th to the 23rd of 1985 brought 15 deaths and $700 million in damages. And then even Nicole just 3 years ago brought 11 deaths to the state of Florida and $1 billion in damages. Now I point these out not to say that we're going to have something like that, but it just to emphasize that yes, we're in the latter stages of hurricane season. They can still happen, but the dynamics in those years were a little bit different than what we're seeing now. We didn't quite have this big just plunge of cooler air coming in from the north that really is just disrupting that. And we actually, a couple of years ago, we had one storm that did, I think it was last year. I'm going to try to pull up the graphic here right now. We did have one storm that formed in the Caribbean, and it kind of meandered and stalled out in the Gulf. And here it is. Let me see. Oh, it was Raphael, the one right there in the bottom middle of the screen. And you can see that purple line. It just kind of heads out into the Gulf and stops. That was because we had a just kind of cooler air mass that came through. It peaked as a Cat 3, but that air mass just absolutely more like blew it out like if you blow out a candle, and just absolutely caused it to get disrupted and fall apart. So at least for now, I would say the tropics look pretty calm through at least mid to late November. The Atlantic, pretty confident it's shut off. And I think just overall, things are calming down. I do want to take a quick question here from Casper. He says, a wild set of comparison statistics in the East Pac and Atlantic had less than half the hurricanes of the East Pac, but double the major hurricane days. So what he's saying is that the Atlantic this year didn't have a lot of hurricanes. A lot of people have been talking about that. It was kind of a calm season. The meteorologists over forecasted, but Casper here in one of our comments said, yeah, but we had more major hurricane days, meaning days that we had Cat 3, 4s, or 5s than normal. Actually, I think the total ACE, accumulated cyclone energy, and I'm going to make some graphics. My next tropical, Talkin Tropics, we're going to talk about this. We had 3 Cat 5s, 140% above average of the normal ACE accumulation in the Atlantic, meaning that the energy overall was well above average in the Atlantic. Just take that a food for thought. We had 3 Cat 5s. That is well more. If you get 1 Cat 5 in a season, that's remarkable. If you get 3, that's an above average season, even if the storms did not hit your home. And thankfully, the United States missed out on most of these storms. I got another question here asking about, could we see that super typhoon impacting the Philippines? Yeah, on the other side of the world. And as I mentioned, the second part of this update, we're going to talk about those global tropics. So I'll be back in just a second after a break, so stand by. And let's take a look around the world in other areas that are seeing some major storm systems.
Cut the cord, get the app, stream free. Download the First Coast News Plus app, your trusted source for news, your weather, all your sports, and so much more on your time. Yeah, your schedule. It's your most accurate forecast, your weather impact alerts, extended breaking news coverage, and exclusive specials at a time that is convenient to you and your family. Download First Coast News Plus and watch for free right now.
I knew I needed physical therapy to be able to get back to doing the things I want to do, specifically golf.
Throughout Brooks Rehabilitation, with the 50+ locations we have, we see people with many injuries across the board. We're really looking to individualize a treatment plan and create goals together. That way they can get back to the sport or activity they love to do.
I would definitely recommend Brooks to anyone who needs physical therapy. It enabled me to get back on the golf course to do what I want to do.
Nothing breeds competition and camaraderie in a community like sports. It gets your adrenaline up. Sports has a unique way of bringing people together. Your First Coast sports team understands that. We go beyond the X's and O's and to the heart of the game, where wins don't always make winners and the L's don't necessarily make losers, and where the highlights sometimes mean more than the trophy. It's where the real stories are told.
Sports Finals sponsored by Farrah and Farrah, Sunday nights at 11:30 and streaming on First Coast News Plus.
All right, so let's take a look around the global tropics, because of course the Atlantic may be calming down, but there are obviously other areas to talk about. So let's throw up our graphics here and let's take a look at the other side of the world. Well, okay, first off, there we go. Let's start with this video here. This is actually out of Cebu. And let's actually, can we go back to the graphics real quick? And let's start this over. Because I want to show what we have going on out there first before we talk about this. Because in the Philippines, they are recovering from a major typhoon there. Typhoon Tinos is known locally, also known as Kalmigi. But see right there, the Philippines in the middle. But towards the west, we have a landfalling tropical system there. That is Kalmigi, the same one that just impacted the Philippines, just made landfall in Vietnam. This storm system continuing to bring heavy rainfall out there, and even a pretty significant storm surge just south of Da Nang. Some areas could see well over a foot of total rainfall accumulation. Now, that same storm, as I mentioned, did just impact the Philippines, where they're preparing for yet another typhoon in the wake of it. And now let's show this video out of Cebu, because they had some very serious impacts here. Heavy rainfall in totals over the course of 24 hours, about 1 to 2 feet in spots, about 300 to 500 millimeters of total rainfall. It overflowed rivers here. It caused some serious damage. Over 140 fatalities have been reported at this time across the Philippines, not only specifically in this, the second largest city of the country, but in Leyte, which is just towards the east where it made landfall, Negros, just towards the west of this area where it also crossed over. Problem with the Philippines, it is multiple islands, so when a storm comes on shore strong, it really stays over water just as much as it stays over land. It can maintain a lot of that energy. And this storm right here, the core didn't actually hit this area, but it was just the overall moisture flow that piled up and really just resulted in this catastrophic flooding. And they are still recovering, and yet another storm system is on its heels. Now, good and bad news here. Let's go back to our satellite picture. Is that this next storm system, it looks like it's going to track a little bit further towards the north than where you just saw that video out of. Bad news is this next storm is a very large storm, so it is going to have a pretty big wide swath. So some of those areas are going to be looking at additional precipitation, but most of this is going to be a little bit further towards the north. But this is a classic example. If we saw this in the Atlantic, you'd be going, yeah, there's a major hurricane on tap. And this is a major typhoon on tap. From the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, that is the NHC's equivalent, by the way. JTWC for the Western Pacific. It's based out of Pearl Harbor, and their main job is to warn on military American assets out here in the Western Pacific. But not only military, but also, of course, parts of the United States. Quite literally, Guam, Yap, and Saipan. That's part of the U.S. And they actually, the Guam National Weather Service has high surf advisories, small craft advisories, and heavy rainfall advisories across those islands there. Remember, this is just as much part of the United States as Florida is. These people are currently being impacted by a tropical system at this time. Now, this is a far cry from some of the bad storms they get. Guam, just a couple years ago, was hit by a typhoon that was about a Cat 4 to Cat 5 equivalent. They get hit by this stuff. So this is kind of sideswiping them, but still it is problematic, and they are still being impacted by it nonetheless. And then we go over to this right here. This is the forecast for Tropical Storm Feng Wong. As it is known internationally in the Philippines, is actually being called Uwan. So they have two different names here. It gets a little confusing sometimes. But Feng Wong is expected to intensify up to about a Category 4 equivalent, according to the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, before making landfall there in eastern areas of Luzon in the northern portions of the Philippines. So Cebu is kind of well south of that, central areas of Visayas where you just saw that video out of. They're not going to be impacted directly by this, but some of those areas towards the north, they are absolutely going to be getting just some major hurricane equivalent, what they call a super typhoon in the western Pacific out here. And it's moving over sea surface temperatures well above 80, about 85 to 86 in spots. Plenty of moisture, abundant energy with this, and upper level divergence. These are all ingredients that are going to allow this to intensify. And there are spots here in the empirical system getting well over a foot of rainfall across the mountains, especially of northern Luzon. But even further towards the south, around Manila, the largest city in the Philippines, they're going to be looking at some just absolutely flooding rains with this too. So it is a broad range of impacts that are going to be happening out there just on the heels of a previous major storm that resulted in well over 100 fatalities there across the Philippines. And, you know, I bring this up because we were talking about, you know, the Atlantic, where there's not much happening out here right now, but there are other places of the world that we're still dealing with some major tropical systems. By the way, this satellite imagery does show where Melissa is right now in the North Atlantic, but just a week ago, it was over Jamaica. And I got to talk to videographer, extreme storm chaser, Josh Morgerman, about the inside of a Cat 5 eye wall. And the way he describes it is absolutely jaw-dropping. So don't go anywhere. We're going to have one more commercial break. And as we come back, I'm going to show you my conversation with Josh Morgerman on his 83rd eye wall penetration. And he says this might rank as one of the strongest.
Why do we come here? To reach for new heights, to dive to new depths. You can call it a team, even a community. That connection with others. We all deserve that. So why come here? This is why.
Swing into luxury, where golf and community come home. Located in St. John's, Florida, Stillwater is a premier 55-plus active adult community where golf is in your backyard. This bundled golf course community features a championship 18-hole course, top tracer practice facility, and resort-style amenities. Whether perfecting your swing or connecting with neighbors, Stillwater offers the perfect blend of relaxation and recreation. Live where every day feels like a getaway.
Maybe you're new to all this streaming, OTT, on-demand stuff. You need a trusted news and weather source, and we've got you with First Coast News Plus.
That's some pretty serious cold.
It's your most accurate forecast, your weather impact alerts,
heavy law enforcement presence,
extended breaking news coverage,
and that breaking news right now out of Camden County, Georgia,
and exclusive specials, all on your schedule. So download First Coast News Plus and start watching for free.
You couldn't see anything. The inside of the core of this hurricane was just a solid whiteout. It was just white. It was pure energy with like wreckage flying by. And there was a screaming sound that was so loud. I was with a couple of people, including a couple of women who were holding their ears.
Hurricane Melissa made landfall as one of the strongest storms to ever come ashore in the Atlantic. It had sustained winds at 185 miles per hour, a high-end Category 5 storm. And in the middle of this was videographer Josh Morgerman. He's been in some of the strongest storms on Earth. And Melissa, he said, ranks as one of the strongest. I had the privilege to talk with him about what it was like inside of this Category 5 storm and the ongoing recovery efforts in Jamaica. So I'm here with extreme storm chaser Josh Morgerman. Josh, so much for taking time to talk with me here about Melissa and the impacts out there from this storm system. Um, Josh, you've been through over 80 plus eye walls. And this category 5, how does this rank against all the other storms you've been through here?
It's a good question. I'm still sort of like reflecting on it, sort of digesting it. There's some kind of like, there's some digesting after an experience like this, but it very well might have been number one out of the 83 hurricanes I've been in terms of just the unbelievable ferocity of this thing. Definitely for sure, top three, possibly number one. It was off the charts. This is as strong as hurricanes get.
That is absolutely incredible. And I guess to follow up on that, so you were communicating, you're very good at putting out information in real time during and ahead of these storms. People all over the world watch you. And I know that on October 28th at 10:25, you put out a tweet, and this is just a little clip of it. Frightening power, whiteout, roofs tearing off, gusts like bombs. And then after you put out this tweet, you went communication dark for about 36 hours, and that was right when the storm was making landfall. Can you talk me through what happened during those 36 hours?
Yeah, I think that tweet, I think I must have sent that just around when we were entering the eye wall. We started to get real wind damage. The building across the street, the roof ripped off, and then the second story, which was made of concrete, collapsed. That's how strong the winds were already. And it actually got worse from there. The palm trees were bending almost to the ground. It was just wild looking. And then everything just turned white. You couldn't see anything. The inside of the core of this hurricane was just a solid whiteout. It was just white. It was pure energy with like wreckage flying by. And there was a screaming sound that was so loud. I was with a couple of people, including a couple of women who were holding their ears. That's how loud the scream of the wind was. We were in the kitchen of the hotel. We finally had to bolt the door shut. And when you peeked through the cracks in the shutters, all you could see was whiteness. And I remember thinking to myself, this town's getting absolutely blasted. And when the hurricane started to move away, my fears were well founded. The destruction was just off the charts. Hard to even capture it in words.
But I mean, as far as just saying it in words go, not too many people have been through Cat 5 storms, and I think that paints a very vivid description there, Josh. And you're talking about the aftermath here, impacts across Jamaica. I mean, you were there for days after the landfall. What do they need in Jamaica right now? What do you think is the best way for people back in the States to support them?
That's a great question. So the whole island was not hit the same. The eastern part where the capital Kingston is got off pretty easy. They basically had a tropical storm on that side. The violent inner core of the hurricane struck the west end of the island, which is a little more rural, has some resorts and stuff. That area was flattened. Wood buildings flattened. Concrete buildings depends how good the concrete was. Some of them collapsed, some of them stayed up. Of the ones that stayed up, almost every building lost its roof. The roads in the impact zone, it's just piles of rubble, and the rubble's made of buildings, houses, power poles, trees. It's just a big mess. So some of the first steps are they're trying to plow paths through the wreckage because that's number one. You need to do that to get the relief in there. And then they're trying to get food and medical aid in. I have to say, I was impressed. I think that the Jamaicans have done a very good job with the initial steps. The city of Black River was absolutely devastated. I mean, devastated. And when I was there a couple days after the hurricane, I sensed that things were, I don't want to say under control, but they had military and cops on every corner. They had aid trucks going through. Every resident had their arms full of supplies. They had medical, mobile clinic people on the ground. So I was like, okay, wow, this is a great first step. But any hurricane would need any nation would need help after a hurricane like this. Even after Hurricane Katrina, a lot of Americans don't know we got international help, believe it or not, after Katrina. And a small country like Jamaica absolutely needs help in terms of resources and stuff. So folks should help out, and the best way to do that is to go to supportjamaica.gov.jm. Let me make sure I have that right. Yeah, supportjamaica.gov.jm. That's a good portal to get started to give help.
All right, we'll make sure we have a link to all of that on our website just to make sure people can get there and get to the best resources. Now, last question I got for you, Josh, here. I know you are busy. You're going after Melissa. You're about to go chase another typhoon here on the other side of the world. Um, and that leads into the final question. A lot of people are going to ask this. Why do you do what you do? I mean, you go inside these storms. What drives you to do this?
Sometimes I ask myself that question. Deep into this chase, I remember just thinking, God, I really hate this. Just the uncertainty and the stress, and you're in a country that you're not familiar with, and it's the middle of the night, and you're tired, and the hurricane's coming in, and you're trying to find somewhere to survive it, and it's scary and it's unpleasant. And I ask myself that, but just that fascination that hurricanes bring, they're so hypnotic to me that it's almost like a drug that I can't help but chase, despite how unpleasant it is sometimes. It is sort of an addiction, to be perfectly honest.
Wow. Well, Josh, thank you so much for talking with me. I truly appreciate it. I know you were busy, you're between storms, so thanks for taking the time to get that information out there to make sure, this recovery efforts from Melissa, I'm sure, are going to take a long, long time. So more information, the better. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Rob.